Hello, welcome to Outside Xbox and something a little bit different. Last weekend I was invited by Porsche and Forza Motorsport 7 to the Goodwood Festival of Speed, which is basically a very rich bloke's garden party, only with 100 or so thousand extra people and a ton of very expensive road and racing cars. I didn't spot any cucumber sandwiches, but I'm prepared to believe they're still part of the mix. The idea was for me to experience Forza Motorsport 7's Porsche GT2 RS, which you might remember as the car Forza boss Dan Greenawalt unveiled at the Xbox E3 conference, in a top-of-the-line motion simulator, and then take a real-life ride in a Porsche to provide an immediate, direct comparison. Oh, and the chap on the right here, that's Forza YouTuber Don Joon Song. He made a video of a Cadillac limo drifting in reverse in Forza 6 that did 300 million views on Facebook, because a load of people thought it was real-life driver training for the Secret Service. If you're into this sort of thing, you should definitely look him up. Goodwood is actually amazing if you're a racing game fan. Not only do games like Forza 7 and Project Cars 2 have an increasing presence at the show, with simulators and lap time competitions, it's also an opportunity to spot so many cars from your favourite racing games in the metal. Like this Group A Lancia Delta Integrale, which is the one I spent hundreds of hours as a kid chucking around Corsica in Sega Rally. It was everything I could do not to go and physically hug that thing. Our first stop was more Forza Horizon 3 than Forza Motorsport 7 though. Like some kind of elaborate hazing procedure, Porsche put me inside one of their Cayenne SUVs and had a nice Scottish man throw it around a muddy field for a bit. The main thing I learned was that even immediately after lunch, my stomach was up to the challenge. Just. Next stop was a fantastically expensive motion simulator hooked up to Forza Motorsport 7. There was a nice man there, who I thought was from the Forza team, and I asked him how much the thing cost. He said $40,000 and asked if I still wanted one. I laughed and said no, and then later found out that he works for the company that makes them. Then I felt a bit bad. But not too bad. I mean, 40 grand. Anyway, assuming you're not paying for it out of your own savings, it's an excellent way to play Forza Motorsport 7. The thing's properly plugged into the physics engine, and in combination with a fancy force feedback steering wheel, you get a real sense of what the car's doing under you. Here is what I thought immediately afterwards.
The Porsche 911 GT2 RS in Forza Motorsport 7 is absolutely savage. I was playing on the Dubai track, which is quite challenging. It's quite a lot of low-speed corners and things, and the GT2 RS is not a car that wants you to go slowly in it, essentially. It's got a lot of power, it's really tempting you to kind of put your foot down. So it's quite technical sections, but then you've got these really high-speed corners where the downforce really sort of steps up, and then you're just kind of hanging on for dear life. It's a really, really sort of challenging game in terms of the environment, because there's areas of the track where sand is kind of like slipping onto the racing line and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff you have to deal with that you didn't have to deal with in previous Forza games, which is a really, really interesting addition. And yeah, just playing it with a proper motion simulator and feeling all of the kind of physics underneath, feeling the car moving underneath you, was a brand new experience for me. I've never played a Forza game in a motion simulator before, so it's really nice to see that stuff, that all the maths that's going on underneath, translating to what I can feel both in the steering wheel and in my butt.
When I say in my butt, I don't mean actually inside my butt. I mean that's where you feel the... Look, never mind. Next stop was the Michelin supercar paddock to meet my ride up the Goodwood Hill, the 2017 Porsche Panamera Turbo Sport Turismo.
So we're down in the paddock here at Goodwood. I've sampled Forza Motorsport 7 and driven the Porsche 911 GT2 RS. Now I'm going to get a ride up in an actual Porsche, the 2017 Panamera Turbo, and experience this stuff in real life to see how it compares to the video game. I'm expecting to be surprised by this car, just because it is a 5-door shooting brake essentially, tons of luggage space and things like that, but it's an absolute weapon. This thing goes 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds. You know, it is not short on power, so it's going to be fascinating to see how quick it is for a car this size, but also how it handles the hill climb and sort of hugs the corners, because obviously Porsche are known for their handling, so it's going to be really, really interesting to see how a car this large handles those tight, twisty corners.
So, as someone who plays a lot of racing games and watches a lot of motorsport, you'd expect I'd be good and ready for the experience of being driven up the Goodwood hill climb at speed by Porsche experience instructor Simon Simpson, right? Not so much. So you're going to frighten me, Simon?
Hopefully not.
You're very chilled out, I like it.
It's the best way to be. If it ever starts looking frantic, it's going wrong.
Right. Alright. Rolling up to the start of the Goodwood hill climb. And we've got £13 million worth of Rolls Royce in front of us as well, so we've got an incentive not to stack it.
Yeah. Certainly have.
This guy knows. This guy knows that we're going to catch up with that car going 50 miles an hour if we're not careful. Whoa! Wow! Oh my god. My head is now rammed into the back of my helmet. This thing is fast. Just the acceleration is incredible. I cannot believe this is a 5-door. Oh man. It's so agile as well. It does not feel like a car of this size. This is better than any roller coaster I've ever been on. Oh man. Made light work of that Rolls Royce, which is going at a very stately pace, as you might imagine. Man, genuinely my skull is wedged into the back of the helmet and across the line. Oh my god.
There you go, we're in one piece.
Thank you, Simon, for not killing me. Much appreciated. That launch control is bonkers.
It is phenomenal, isn't it?
Just the amount of power this thing is able to lay down off the line. Unbelievable. Having experienced that, it's difficult to believe that the GT2 RS I was driving in the motion simulator is even more powerful and even quicker to 60 miles per hour. The Panamera Turbo was more than enough car for me, as I rather excitedly explain here.
My hill climb up the Goodwood Hill in the Panamera was incredible. I sort of, having just gone in the simulator and played Forza Motorsport 7, it shakes you around a bit, you're being thrown into the corners a little bit. This thing was just on another level. The launch control wedged me back into my seat and then my head back into the helmet. It just sort of squats and goes basically, and it just astonishing. You hear the figures, 3.6 seconds to 60. Sounds super impressive, but it's not until you feel it and those forces yourself. It's unreal. I think for a large vehicle, it's astonishingly agile. It didn't feel unwieldy at all. And the Goodwood Hill climb is quite a narrow piece of tarmac. We see people stacking it all the time because they've run off the road. But it felt completely composed and just astonishingly quick. Really, it's a large car, but the performance is that of a supercar essentially, and that's the kind of where we're at with cars these days, is that you're now getting supercar performance in all shapes and sizes, in SUVs, in big 5-door cars like this, where you can fit a ton of luggage in the boot and 2 kids, and then still hoon it around the Nürburgring if that's what you want to do. I would not suggesting that with the kids in the back. That seems somewhat reckless, but yeah, it's astonishing the level of performance that cars have unlocked now that is available to a sort of much wider audience than the kind of hypercar purchaser of old.
The thing is, I don't own a Porsche of any description. The car I drive is 10 years old, so I simply haven't experienced anything as quick off the line as a modern car like the Panamera, ever. I've clearly led a sheltered life. In the context of racing simulators, this car is much closer to the level of performance of the cars I would choose to drive in racing games like Forza 7. As a result, having compared the two things back to back, it sort of reframed my entire experience of playing racing games.
Yeah, it was great to see this event from another side, and awesome to be able to put the game and the car in kind of direct comparison and realise just how, even with virtual reality, even things like that, there's nothing quite like being crammed into the back of your seat by a supercar. I think it's been a real education for me. I play a lot of racing games. I spend a lot of time staring at the screen. They do an amazing job of so many elements of the simulation. In terms of the way the cars handle, the way they feel. The driving dynamics in Forza 7 are really, really impressive. And driving a car like a GT2 RS in that game, you get a real sense of the power that is. You feel like you're hanging on and things. But it's always amazing to then remind yourself of just what those forces are like in real life. And I think now going back to playing Forza, which I will be doing probably all night till 3 AM, having just had this experience, I'm still going to be feeling that as I go back to the game, and I think that's what's really, really cool.
So there you go, a bit of a revelatory afternoon for me there, and one that will affect how I perceive racing games in the future, which is not at all what I expected when I agreed to play a bit of Forza 7 and be chauffeured up a posh man's driveway. As I said at the start, this was something a bit different, but like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time on Outside Xbox.